introductions, and then I'm going to move right into introducing you all. Jessica, I saw you on. Thank you so much for being here. Jess, Linda, and Erin, I really appreciate it. Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third day and second and final session of today, the 2021 Early Learner Forum. My name is Kayla Klein. I'm the director of Black Hills Reads campaign, which is an education initiative under the United Way of the Black Hills umbrella. I'm also the public policy chair for the statewide Early Learner South Dakota initiative and organizer of this event. Early Learner South Dakota's vision is that all children have access to high quality early learning experiences and environments to create a solid foundation for lifelong success. As a reminder, we ask that you feel free to put some questions in the chat for our panelists. And this session will also be recorded and available for later viewing. So if anyone's not able to make it, you'll be able to find it on our website as soon as tomorrow. You are welcome to turn on your cameras if you would like. I would ask that everyone stay on mute except for the panelists, and then panelists can even keep themselves on mute just to kind of help with the interference and background. So first, I would like to say thank you so much to all of our panelists here today. We have Senator Castleberry with us, Representative Duba, Representative Healey, and former Senator Partridge. Thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate your time out of your very busy schedules. I am going to do a quick round of introductions. So my first question to you all, and I'm going to start with Erin Healey, an introduction and what brought you to this panel today? What made you feel like you needed to be a part of this panel today?
Thank you, Kayla. I'm Erin Healey, Representative Erin Healey from Sioux Falls. I represent District 14, which is like the southeastern area. What drew me to serve on this panel today, I've been very active in early learning education, and I've brought a few bills in the past years to create an early learning advisory council. I just think it's imperative that we focus on early learning as a way to, solve a plethora of issues, including poverty and opportunity gap. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Kayla.
Thank you so much. Senator Castleberry, the same question to you.
Hi, Kayla. Thanks for having me here today. I'm having some issues with my internet. So I connect to the hotspot on my phone and I'm just
No worry. The one thing I was going to mention, Jessica, if you turn off your video.
Can you hear me okay?
We are having a little hard time hearing you. I think if you turn off your video, sometimes that helps with your audio become a little clearer. Go ahead and try that.
Okay, how's that?
That's better. Yep.
Okay, yeah, you're still breaking up a little bit for me, but we'll go ahead and give it a try. So sorry about that. I'm Senator Jessica Castleberry, and I represent District 35, which is Rapid Valley, Box Elder, and Northeastern Rapid City. I own 3 preschools out in Rapid City, and I served as the past president for the South Dakota Association for the Education of Young Children. I was a quality early learning advocate in DC for several years on behalf of SDAYC, and I was very involved with Early Learner South Dakota at its inception, and originally writing some of the grants and facilitating some of the first few meetings. So I'm excited to be here, and hopefully I can communicate well enough with my spotty internet.
That all came through very well, Jessica. Thank you so much again for being here. The next question, I'll send that same question to Representative Duba, please.
Thank you, Kayla, and welcome everybody today. I'm Linda Duba. I represent District 15 in Sioux Falls, and when you think of District 15, think of the north end and the downtown area of our fair city. Early learning to me it's a passion. I currently am spending my days in the kindergarten classroom when I'm not here at the legislature at Laura B. Anderson Grade School, which is a Title I school. Many of the students that we have in our kindergarten class have not had the opportunity to attend preschool. And so they're already starting behind. When I say behind, early learning is just so important and so critical for our students to feel like they, as they come into kindergarten, that they're ready to learn, that they understand, that they're able to socially get along with those in their classroom. Just the real basics of social interaction. How do I mesh with my peers? How do I use my scissors? I mean, these are the basics, and a good early learner preschool program has all of these factors, and then children are ready to learn how to do the alphabet, say their letters and their numbers 1 through 100. And right now, I can assure you, in the class of 15 that I have, there are all but 6 children can do this. That's kind of shocking, I know. And thank you for having me today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Now, Mr. Partridge, same question to you, please.
Thanks, Kayla. I would say that as an elected official at both the city and the state levels, I was like most conservative politicians who basically initially bristled at the thought of any type of, government overreach into our preschoolers. Really the should the government be in charge of 3 and 4 year olds? They already are in charge of 5, those types of talking points. And I went along with those for a long time. However, I really have overcome those initial objections and educated myself on the value of early childhood education, especially the economic value of early childhood education. So I really have found the data and the economic impact, the direct link between early childhood education and the personal economic success is very compelling. And that has it extends to a benefit for the overall economic region of the area. So that was really my turning point, in the entire conversation, and something that makes me a very willing participant. I was with, especially with Representative Healey, on bills and things like that, but I am and continue to be now going forward.
I'm really glad you brought that up. I might stick with you just for a second here. What was the turning point for you in, from going from one thought process to the next?
I will say the turning point was a few conversations with some, former legislators like Craig Teason. The late Craig Teason did a great job of trying to kind of crack through. Rob Grunewald's presentation from the Federal Reserve was especially impactful on me. I am a financial advisor. We listen to the Fed. I read their beige book that has economic impact for South Dakota. All the nerdy numbers type stuff are things that I are already engaged with. And it was just odd for me to think that the Federal Reserve was engaged in early childhood education. Not only that, but the science that went along with it, brain development, all these different things, and then policy changes that could have a great impact for the long term. The Federal Reserve, as a group of districts and as a central bank for the United States, I didn't think would be involved in something like this. They are focused with 2 tasks that we all as a collective have asked them to focus on, and that is full employment and inflation. We often hear them in the news for interest rates, but it's really full employment and inflation that they are responsible for. And the full employment side with jobs and the impact on the economy is where they get involved with early childhood education and the amazing impact that it can have on the long-term economy of city, state, and region.
Thank you so much for that. I want to remind everyone that we did actually hear from the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis yesterday. And if any of you were not able to watch that, I would highly encourage you all to go and view the recording. They also just released a new paper and some research that they had done specifically in South Dakota that was in that chat from the call yesterday. Really interesting stuff. Now, I'm glad this was a perfect segue. So thank you for that. I think I want to move into the next question and maybe I'll bring this to Representative Healey. How possible do you think it is in order for South Dakota to maybe take some next steps into supporting early learning? Do you think it's possible? And if so, how?
I do think it's possible. I wouldn't have brought the legislation if I didn't think it was. I think the silver lining of the legislation that we saw from the past 2 years is we have informed the public of how important early learning is to our communities all across our state, and the work that needs to be continued in order to achieve that. There are a lot of people we need to convince. Obviously, that's no small feat, but with the right people, including this group that we have in here right now, I do think we can accomplish that. Much like Senator Partridge, it's going to take a lot of convincing, but with the right tools and the right facts and the right information to provide to representatives and senators, and even our governor and the governor's offices, agencies, both the Department of Social Services and Department of Education, we can accomplish this. It's just going to take some time and a lot of motivation from groups like this.
Great points too. Thank you so much. Senator Castleberry, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I definitely appreciate Senator Partridge's point of view with the economic development. I think that is one of our best cases that we can make for arguing why early learning is so important in South Dakota. The other things that I might add, and specifically because I got into listening to what everyone else was saying, specifically, what was your question, Kayla?
I'm sorry. Do you think that movement forward in South Dakota and promoting early learning at the state level is possible? And if so, how?
Sure. Okay. I think that it is possible, but I also think that we have a lot of relationship building that needs to happen. It's really important that leaders within your organizations are contacting legislators on a regular basis. And you guys have done a really good job with having more of a presence in Pierre, even this year without being able to have a physical presence necessarily. You definitely have done well with getting information on desks and things of that nature. But that's something else too, that as you're building your coalitions and as you're building your different early learning communities, that those communities take that engagement piece with legislators very seriously also, and to stay in contact with them. And it's just like in life or in business or in the legislature, it's all about relationship building. And so if leaders within your organizations, and if you as individuals are reaching out to your specific legislators on a regular basis and just providing information and creating that relationship, that's what is going to help this move forward. If your representative can say, oh yeah, that's Kayla, and you know, these are the things that she stands for, and you know, I visited with her at this and I visited with her at that, and she sent me this email and she let me know that, you know, she congratulated me when I won my reelection and things like that. It's all about building relationships, just like anything else in life.
I think that's a great point, and again helped me segue very much into another question we had is, and this can be open up to anyone. how is it that we as advocates or supporters of early learning, how can we help this movement forward of supporting early learning at the state level? What is it that we can do? And feel free to anyone take that question.
I might take the first shot at it if I could.
Sure, yes, please.
So I think visiting with legislators and the governor and this governor's staff in a very succinct way would be the way to go. I love what Senator Castleberry said about building relationships, knowing who you are and what you stand for in a very conciliatory type way and that kind of thing. But in addition to that, having some kind of method or way that you can quickly get to a very, concise point with them, I think would be very important. I have an idea on that if I could share it with you. And the idea would be to have like an index card that had 3 numbers on it: 76, 44, 35. So this is what I'm thinking about doing. So 76% of kids under the age of 6 have all of their parents or caregivers working. And then what I think I'll do with the legislators, I'll say, so we're a hardworking people in South Dakota, aren't we? That's what we are, and try to get, some agreement on the fact that, hey, we're hardworking in South Dakota, and kids are being watched by someone else than parents. I think what you want to try to do is stay away from, well, when I was a kid, or, what parents should do today, or any of that kind of stuff. Just stick with that 76%. And the fact that we're hardworking. Okay, we've got some agreement. Next is, I would say something along the lines of, did you know statewide, 44% of children under the age of 6 live in a household that earns $35,000 or less? I hope that number is accurate, but maybe you guys can tell me if it's not. But I was thinking of, okay, 76, 44, and now try to get, some talk about how we have low incomes in South Dakota. Not trying to get at what the poverty level is or 200% of the, and how much does it cost to raise a kid? And well, we were raised on beans, and you go through all of that. It's like that is a conversation that gets really hard, to try to fight your way out of. Just stick with, 44% of kids under 6. So nearly, let's call it, it's not quite round up to half, but it's close. About half of the kids are on $35,000 or less with a household income. Is that something that you think is acceptable in South Dakota? Do we think that, we have low incomes in South Dakota? Let's admit that, and then finally, it's just like, did you know that early childhood education long-term has a way for increasing incomes in our state? All the economic development things that we're doing and all the rest of education and regents and the universities and all, yes, all contributes. But did you know this is a contributor as well? And I think what I'm going to do, especially with these older guys, is start talking about the legacy that they could leave for South Dakota, versus funding and policies and all that kind of, yes, that's all important to talk about the go forward strategy. But I was thinking with 76, 44, and 35, if they wanted to actually leave a long-term legacy for that baby being born today, would you have an interest in actually increasing incomes in our state long-term, and kind of talk about the legacy and the long-term value for South Dakota?
Well said. And I was furiously taking notes because we will definitely be stealing that. That is fantastic. A great way to put it, and some hard numbers behind it. Representative Healey or Duba, do you have anything to add to that?
You can't compete with that. That's outstanding, Senator Partridge. If we were to spout statistics around the catch-up mode, no one, I understand it, educators understand it, but that to the common person, those numbers don't work for legislators. So I think Jeff has got the right response. I obviously get what it means when a child falls behind, but really that has not worked in the past, and I like what he's saying, so I can't improve on that.
I would agree.
I completely understand. It was very well said. Thank you so much for that. So I guess you guys have been talking a lot about, relationship building seems to be a very much a common theme around all of this. And so my next question would be, is there anything beyond that? I know you guys have given us a few already, but what do you believe maybe has to happen within the legislature to accept the needs for early learning in South Dakota? Is it simply this continuation of communication, or are there any additional things that you see as a need to change the hearts and minds? And any of you can feel free to take that question.
I might share another point from the kind of the majority party, if you will, because that's where the struggle is in trying to convince. One of the other things that I thought would be interesting to talk to legislators, and now that I'm an official has-been, I can go do this and I don't have to worry about it. Talking with them one-on-one. I'm not asking for support on a specific bill or anything like that right now. But I would say something along the lines of, small business is important in South Dakota, and right, and we really understand business a lot of times in South Dakota. I mean, and in the Republican Party, I think a lot of times we talk about running government like a business. You'll see campaigns like that, and that kind of thing. And so I was thinking, well, what if we really talked about early childhood education, early learning as a business, and we talked about the increase of revenue and the decrease of cost. After all, when you're running a business, those are two things that you are focused on. If there's an opportunity to increase revenue, if there's an opportunity to be cost effective with everything you do, that's how we run businesses in this state, right? And so I was thinking that we could talk about the increased revenue opportunities, not so much from like, we got to be careful with that word revenue a little bit, because it's not about getting more tax revenue, but it's also about some of just the positives, the boost in labor productivity, the better job attainment from individuals, which would again go to higher incomes, and which creates better housing security and housing opportunities, and frankly, more spending. And our economy nationwide is 2/3 of the consumer. So when we have someone that is got better productivity and can attain a better job and climb the ladder and get a better housing arrangement and spend more, this is all good for our state from a positive side of the balance sheet or a revenue side of the balance sheet. And then the reduced expense side of the balance sheet falls right along with that, which is reduced expenses in the criminal justice system, reduced expenses in K-12. Kids show up to kindergarten, right? Representative Duba, they show up more prepared. And I mean, just the simple stuff, going to the bathroom and getting in line, and some of these, I mean, just the cost to actually do some of those is extraordinary. And the ongoing costs through, grade school and middle school and high school, I think are reduced, and so if we're worried about educational costs, this should be something that you should think about. Reduced dependency on social safety net. That's something Republicans talk about all the time. The safety net, the social services, all these expenses. Are you interested in actually reducing those costs and those expenses? Not to mention going into the reduction in, drugs, violence that comes from, drugs, and all the incarceration costs that come from all of that, I think has a direct correlation back to early childhood education. So I was thinking of it that way too, talking about small business in our state, especially if you're talking with someone that's a business owner, there might be an opportunity to talk about, what do you look for in business? To really be a successful business long-term, just basic accounting is increased revenue and decreased expenses, right? Well, that's exactly what we're doing here. We're talking about increased revenue and decreased expenses. And by revenue, I don't mean tax revenue. I actually mean increased opportunities for individuals in our state, increased income, increased productivity, increased job opportunities, increased housing, increased spending, which of course then is increased sales tax for the state, but I mean, that's takes us trying to get us back to that legacy thing of out of the 35,000. So I kind of thought about that as a way as well, related to talking about early childhood, to say from a business perspective, maybe there'd be an opportunity to look at some basic accounting, but then kind of turn that conversation a little bit to say, doesn't this make sense for increased revenue and decreased expenses?
Well, you're going to have to be careful, because I think you're going to get a lot of calls on trying to bring you to the early learner group. But no, this is good. This is great stuff. We've really been trying to change our focus to an economic development perspective. I did put a link in the chat for everyone on the call on some papers and infographics and things like that Early Learner South Dakota has made, specifically connecting those two. Representative Healey, I saw that you came off mute. Did you have something to add, or
Well,
Representative Duba?
Obviously, the information that Senator Partridge gave us, it also links very closely with the Fed study. But most importantly, I think that people need to understand is also this is a long-term approach. This is not a quick fix, but it's a long-term approach that really pays off. And if anyone really questions you, you obviously can back it up with statistics. And he is dead on when he talks about reduced expense into the criminal justice system, people who are on social safety net programs and products. I mean, obviously, when we teach a child to learn, now we can't control all of the social factors, but when you teach a child to learn and they learn to love education, which is a safe place for them to be, they're more than likely to grow up and hold a job. End of story. So long-term investment, but a great way to look at it. I mean, that's how we talk this story.
Yes, very good points. Thank you so much. I want to, Senator Castleberry, do you have anything you'd like to add to the points of what might need to happen in order to kind of further the acceptance of early learning and those types of things in South Dakota, with the South Dakota legislature?
Thanks for the question, Kayla. I think that Senator Partridge is right on, and he has such an excellent way of communicating with all different, with all different types of people, and creating buy-in for projects. And so his advice is spot on. And there are some other things that I would add that maybe are, again, I know I go back to the relationships and interactions and things of that nature, but it's really important too that as you guys are sending people out to the Capitol, to make sure, and I don't know if that comes through a briefing with your volunteers before they come out, but just to make sure that everybody is on the same page of interactions and conduct, because you really want to put your best foot forward. And we want to make sure that people do understand that this is a nonpartisan issue. And so if you have anybody coming out here that has any kind of a partisan chip on their shoulder, then you're already undermining your efforts.
That's a great point. Yes, thank you so much for that. So I guess I may be curious, have any of you been hearing directly from your constituents on concerns about early learning at the local level? I see that. Go ahead.
I'll go first. I don't know if it's because I was the one to introduce the legislation, but I knock on a lot of doors during the campaign season, and I was just so surprised by how many people care about this issue. Mm-hmm. And I'm a Democrat that represents a Republican district, and these are moderate Republicans who understand the need for early learning and better childcare in our state. And if we can get more people on board like that, who are willing to reach out to their elected officials on a local level, a city level, and a state level, and even federally, then maybe this is something that we can finally just hound into other legislators that this is something that your constituents do care about.
And Senator Partridge, I'm not sure, had you been hearing the same message while you were in office?
Well, Deb Teason is a constituent of mine, so how's that for an answer?
There you go.
Yeah, no, I really think District 34 is the west side of Rapid, and I would say that, the folks in Rapid City, I think, at least on a number of them in my district, understood the investment, of it, and the kind of the business case for it, and the longevity of. I like what Representative Duba said about looking long term on this kind of thing, and so I think that they really do like it and get it and want to move forward with it, and it is very interesting because Rapid City tends to be kind of split. Sioux Falls can be kind of split, and so, but this crosses those splits almost. Whether you're talking, about Republicans or Democrats or factions within those two parties, there's people on all sides of this issue, and most of the time they've either had some kind of personal connection or they've, like me, seen the light based on data, and so or just been convinced some way or another through all of your hard work. So I don't know that anyone needs to be pre-classified or really prejudged in any way. I mean, just to say, well, that person's, got a whatever flag in their yard, I'm not going over there. That is not really the case. I mean, there is a number of people that are very interested in this issue and really, once educated, it doesn't matter really what they, really hold as absolutes, or things of those nature politically. It's like, hey, I see this, I can see going forward with that. So I would just make that comment as well, not to really pre-qualify anyone on the fact that they can be reached and they can be talked to. And of course, during the legislative sessions, the worst time to talk to legislators, in my opinion, because they're so busy, they're running 100 million directions. And so the opportunity really is, hey, can I, June or August or even October, can I get you for a cup of coffee for 45 minutes and just talk to you about something that, really is important to me. And I just want to tell you my heart on this issue. And I think that would be the place to do that and try to catch them. I was always amazed as a legislator how few people called me from April until September. I mean, just we don't care about you until, basically we want to meet with you when everyone else does, and it's just like October starts to get busy, November starts to get crazy, December's nuts, and January's worse, and so just the opportunity to plant seeds and really make connections really is all year long. So I would make that argument as well.
That's a great point to make. Go ahead, Representative Healey.
It's Representative Duba. You're stuck with both of us.
Nope, that's good.
I would, first of all, I love Senator Partridge's comment about if you're going to look at a flag hanging from somebody's door, you've already disqualified an individual, and that is inappropriate. And the message needs to go everywhere, and we also need to listen to what their thoughts and concerns are. But more importantly, this was a topic for my district. Now, it comes from in many cases, from a different perspective. I have a district that is extremely poor. So what our folks like to see is they want and need early childhood because many of them cannot afford daycare or preschool. And so this is an opportunity, and they know it, for their children to get that early start into education. So for them, this was a hot topic and very important to them. So it comes from all angles, and they want their children to succeed, and they want to pull themselves up and out.
I think that rings very true. I appreciate you saying that. So I'm gonna switch gears to a different question briefly here, and then I do want to open it up to everyone on the call. Please be thinking of some questions you'd like to ask some of the panelists we have here today. They're very busy, and so we have them during this small amount of time. So feel free to ask your questions in the chat, or be sure to come off mute, and I'll watch for you coming off mute to ask questions. I am going to just ask one question though, just because this came up in some earlier conversations. I don't know if you'll know a lot about this, because I know the funds haven't gotten to South Dakota quite yet, but with the passing of the new federal relief package, do you know how South Dakota plans on spending these funds and what some of the priorities are for early learners in South Dakota?
So I sit on the Appropriations Committee, and one would think that I could answer that question. But since that bill has just recently passed, we haven't, and we're trying to sort it out. The guidance isn't there yet. I'm sure that Liza and her team, Liza Clark, who works for business finance and in our state government, will be coming forward with that. But when groups of money, when we get grants of that nature, really, that can go a lot of different ways. So I think what we should do is stay in contact with you, and then when we know more about that, we'll deliver it as quickly and effectively as we can. But as of yet, we've been told nothing.
Okay.
I'd
Thank
like
you.
to add one
Go ahead,
thing
please.
to that, if I could, as a 6-year appropriations hardened, salty veteran. One of the coaching things I would offer up on this issue with one-time money, or the CARES Act money that came in, and now this extra stimulus, you've got to know the difference between one-time money and ongoing funding. If you present, let's say early childhood education for 4-year-olds in the state of South Dakota with one-time money, it is dead on arrival, because you will have people say, well, what do we do in year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? I mean, it's got to be, the ongoing piece. Yes, you can use one-time money for studies. I don't know that we need it. We have enough data. I think you mentioned Ben Horowitz's brief the other day that just came out from the Fed, and there's probably a whole host of other things that I don't know about that you guys do. But I would just offer that coaching, a little bit of that coaching thing up to say, well, geez, it seems like you guys got a ton of money this year. And yes, they do. But it was really one-time money that they have in the 2021 budget that Representative Duba is working on right now to wrap up June 30 of 2021. And then she's also looking out to 2022, which starts July 1. Appropriations works on 2 budgets at a time, all the time. But I would just offer that as a rookie mistake. Don't make it, because it is a case where when someone brings something up and says, hey, how about we do this? The one-time funding versus ongoing funding is a really important delineation.
In regards to
And
funding,
I'm going to add one more
please.
thing to that. So that is a perfect point. So as we go, the other thing that we're finding out is that there are parameters put around this that may not meet your need. So if we come back and say we can't support that, the Fed sets the rules, and then we have to stay within those parameters. And so we've seen some disappointment this year, but it is not because we don't want to fund it. So I want to make that clear as well. Thank you.
Yes, no, thank you. And I think that's a good segue into another question some folks may be asking is, if funding were ever to be brought up, future tense here, what would be the best way for advocates or interested legislators, champions of early learning to bring this with an ongoing perspective? Any thoughts? I mean, I know that's a big question to unpack, but any thoughts there?
I think, you know what? We listened to Jeff talk about those talking points. So before we come in with any funding request, and it would be ongoing, we've got to have our ducks in a row and truly and clearly explain, here's the investment, here's the ROI. And And it's gotta come like that, because if it doesn't, you're done. You're gonna get a thank you for coming, no thank you, and a hard no. Just being honest with you.
Nope, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I might just add to that really quick.
Mhm.
I think in South Dakota, we have a very strong executive branch. And so that means a very strong governor. And the governor's there all year long, all year round. We are not, as legislators are not. They're part-time, citizen-based legislature, which we love. But at the same time, really trying to figure out a way within the Department of Education, I think, to do some kind of funding. So Tiffany Sanderson would be one to really work with her team. Then them proposing that to the governor, which happens in September, actually, where it would, and I always thought you should do something like the feds do. Feds are always good at doing matching programs. And it's always like, well, we'll fund it half and you guys run it and fund the other half. I mean, I've never figured out, well, maybe they're smarter than we think they are. Anyway, but I mean, that type of thing within the state to do we'll fund something for, let's call it 4-year-olds or 3-year-olds or whatever. And you school district find savings and fund the other half, or don't. If you don't want to at your local level, then that you don't need to take the money. But we have a source of money here ongoing. And this is what we've really worked out, and some kind of matching program and 50-50 type deal, or reward a school district for finding savings and doing this with state money, and have your Department of Education on board for that. That to me would be an angle that could really go and sing, because the governor then would be on board with that and proposing that in her budget to the legislators, and which eventually becomes the G bill with some minor changes, of course. But ultimately, if you can get that done, you're about 3/4 the way there.
Great advice. Senator Castleberry, I saw that you came off mute. Did you have something to add to that?
Yes, I completely agree with Senator Partridge, and that's the direction I was going to go in as well, is making sure that if, as you're making these plans and you're thinking, okay, the funding is probably going to have to go through Department of Education. And I know that in the past, we had actually had Department of Education show up as an opponent to some of the different bills that we've tried to bring. And so having that buy-in from the Department of Ed is extremely important. But something else that I'll mention is that with our current governor and with her staff has been extremely proactive about wanting to reach out to legislators, wanting to reach out to communities. There's been, specifically in the Rapid City area, there's been tremendous interest in creating a better line of communication with the city of Rapid City and with the governor's office to see what the needs are. And so those are all relationships that we need to be leveraging. Their interest, they're wanting to help. If you can get strong liaisons from some of your early learner communities to be coordinating with the governor's Office of Economic Development, Department of Education, and asking those questions of, okay, you're not a supporter now, but what would it take? What are we looking at? And then maybe if you're bringing forth some programs that have mechanisms for self-funding, so that they, if you get some of that federal grant money, or if you're, Jeff knows all the ways to make the money happen. But if you have built-in mechanisms to continue programming and initiatives that can be self-funded, that's going to go a long way. Yeah, there was one other thing I was going to say, but it's slipped my mind. But I do think that there's possibility there, because they are more open to those kinds of conversations and relationships than maybe has been the case in the past.
That's good to know. Essentially helping us, helping them get part of the way there. Healey or Duba, you go ahead.
Just a quick comment. First of all, have you had an opportunity to meet or speak with Tiffany Sanderson at all?
So I personally have a couple different times. Yes, Early Learner South Dakota does constantly kind of have those conversations both with DSS and DOE.
And that's great. And since that you have, you know that she is a friend of education and a firm believer in early learning. So that's good. But even Tiffany, as we all say, need to, you need to build your business case and have some funding mechanisms. But I think that you will find a huge advocate for you there.
Thank you. I think so too. It's a great win for us there, I think.
Yeah.
Kevin Nelson from the group has a question for the panelists.
Well, I have a question, and then I guess maybe some insight on this. I'm representing South Dakota Public Broadcasting, but also the school administrators of South Dakota, and I've been on the Opportunity Gap committee, which is exploring ways that basically, if you're looking at test scores and you're looking at that kind of data, we've kind of plateaued in the state, and there's been some interest in trying to figure that out. And for the first time ever, and it actually came through multiple channels, including the South Dakota National Guard, saying that early learning needs to be at the table. And so we have been at that table. We've been talking about that. But I would also put out there, Erin, you know as well as I do that we have come to the legislature firmly with data, firmly with 7644, all of those things, gone in and got shot down with socialism comments and other type of things. And, the lineup of people who came in with hard data on one side and then the other. And I only bring that up because I think it frames somewhat the work that we're trying to do with the Opportunity Gap, and that is the Department of Education treads incredibly lightly around early learning outside of Head Start and in IDEA. And they are very, very, very cautious about getting very far into that simply because of job security, what they believe their parameters are, kickback from legislators and others. And so as much as I agree with what you said, Jeff, and I think that you're framing that exactly the way it needs to be, there needs to be some shift someplace along the line within leadership in the one party to move us in that different direction, because again, it doesn't make a lot of sense that we have all of this lined up. We even see inroads with Opportunity Gap. And then the minute we try to put some of that into motion, it immediately gets shot down.
And I think that's where elections have consequences, and the people that we elect to these positions, it does matter. And not only does it affect the makeup of our legislature, it affects who becomes minority and majority leader of both parties, both the Senate and the House. And that sets the tone for the whole entire legislative session. And that's why it's so important to make sure that we're electing people who have legitimate understandings of education and early learning, and are not, and I hate to say this because I don't mean to get political at all, but we don't need radicalized people who are going to make those arguments about socialism.
So I'll add one more thing. And I'm sure none of you, I was in a 4.5-hour meeting with Secretary Sanderson this morning and she was laying out her budget. And so the big question before the group is, why are our test scores so low? So what are we doing to bring our test scores up? Well, I could have said many things, but I sat very quietly and listened to the discussion around the room. So there was much disdain for education. And so we have to overcome that. But more importantly, this is where early learning makes the difference. And so keep that in mind. Keep that in the back of your mind, that people are focusing on test scores and performance. And so this is a tool to help us get where we need to be.
Let me throw in and let you know that, in the early learning of South Dakota and some of the work that we're doing, we have had a few people that have, come to the altar and changed their minds about early learning. So, and it, and again, it doesn't have to be an R or a D situation. It certainly can be there. But I guess my question, and probably again back to Jeff and Jessica, is how can we overcome that block that seems to shut down the, when we come with the 76, 44, 35 type of background, brain research, tons of brain research, and yet it's nope. And it's decided, we know it within caucus already. It's already a done deal. So, I mean, that to me is the turning point, and it's not only a turning point in something very similar or simple like what Erin was trying to put together with a governor's committee to oversee early learning, but it also changes the culture within the DOE and how they can approach early learning across the board. Those seem to be the biggest things. Some of that is within would be within statute and law, and some of it is just cultural.
I could throw in a couple of things, having been in those caucus meetings. I would say, really two pieces of advice. One is that, the facts that I'm talking about need to be far simpler and far fewer than they are. Oftentimes it's like, well, here, let me send you this, 17-page white paper and read that and tell me what you think. Well, it's like, you're the 14th person today that sent me a 17-page white paper. So, I mean, that's kind of why I'm saying that, just 3 numbers or something very simple on an index card, might be very helpful. Secondly, I would say that, I forget if it was Representative Healey or Duba that said, we can't fix everything. We can't fix every social issue and everything that happens at home. I think that's a really important message to send out there, that early childhood education is not, intended to fix everything. It's not intended to be a cure-all, for all the social ills that are out there, all the problems at home, or, any type of the trauma that a kid would face, or any of that. It's about trying to reduce it and mitigate it for sure. But it's also trying to, just be able to represent the fact that this is not like the fix. And then finally, when they're listening to you, if you can make those two things really clear, the final deal is to say, this is not about the nanny state taking over. As a matter of fact, with my, kind of my business thing, it's about reducing long-term expenses of what you might think is the nanny state. So those are kind of the 3 things addressing. And one final comment I just might make, and I try to avoid this at all costs, but we go here at times when you're visiting with people of, well, this is the way I was raised. Or if parents today would just do what my parents did, or what I did when I raised my kids, or blah, blah, blah. It's like, hey, you know what? It's 2021. And so, we have kids throughout the state that are being, cared for by others than parents. And most parents we have double parent working homes. You and I talked about the fact that we were hardworking South Dakotans, right? I mean, that's what we do in South Dakota. And so to kind of steer away from, try not to have any of the line of questioning line up with, well, if parents today weren't so stupid, and if parents today would just do what I did or what my parents did or whatever, I mean, just trying to stay away from that comment to, really more with the facts and what's going on, because that is people just struggle getting over that. And it's just like, hey, if 3 out of 4 kids have someone else, watching them, who is that someone else? I mean, maybe ask them, who do you think that is today? What would be your take on that? What's the best scenario for that? If 2 parents are trying to make it and feed their family, what would be the best scenario? Well, probably more early childhood education. Oh, there, you said it. And just trying to kind of more, pull out some of that really that rational thought, as opposed to the way I was raised, the way my parents raised me, the way things were back in 1975. It's like, come on, we have to get off of that presentation, because that's what they're thinking when you're talking. And that's what they're like saying. This is all just a bunch of malarkey because of, the fact that they just want to take over and they want the government to, reach into, 3 and 4-year-olds. And before you know it, they're going to be wanting to take the infant away from a mother, and they're thinking that they really are. And so you have to kind of really stay off of, just stay with the facts of where we're at today and try not to get into too much of the emotion of the way it was.
Senator Castleberry, you came off mute. Did you have something else to add?
Yep, I have just a few things. So one of the things that you'll naturally see a shift. Even this year, I think that we had approximately 10 new legislators that are under the age of 40. And so you're going to see that makeup of the legislature start to change. Now, granted, is that in the timeline that we would like to see change? No, we would like to see change sooner than, before everybody ages out. But you are going to be able to find more buy-in from legislators who are living it. They're not hanging on to notions of when they were a kiddo, running free on the ranch or this or that. So that process is happening, and you guys have started the legwork of identifying legislators. I know you were working on that last year, of who your strong supporters are, who your strong opposition is, and people that you feel like are kind of in the middle and maybe need more information to go either way. And I think that that's really important. And within that work, I think that it will be very important to continue to identify who your champions can be. You have a strong champion in the House with Representative Healey. It's good to continue to identify people in both chambers and in both parties, just to try to get as much support as you guys can. It's really important that you guys have streamlined messages and streamlined asks. We've been having some issues with that, specifically this year, when everyone is under the impression that we're going to have too much money, that we're going to have all this extra money to spend. And so we've had a lot of disorganized communication from different organizations, even saying that they're representing the same subjects. And that has really undermined some of their efforts. And so that's one of the biggest things that I can tell you guys. And then also, I would just add to really be involved in the election process. And I know that it's another one of those things that takes time, and it's hard when you have full-time jobs and you're doing other things and you're trying to advocate. But one of the most extreme lobbyists that we have out here that voices their opinion frequently and has frequently voiced their opinion on some of our early learning bills that we've brought. She ran for the House and she only lost by 64 votes. And so that's something where early learning advocates should have been extremely aware of what was going on and doing a lot of work within that district and a lot of education to help people understand the importance, and especially in those primaries, because people ignore the importance of the primary. The primary is who your candidates are going to be. So that is definitely a direction that I'd encourage you to go in.
Very valid points. Thank you, Senator Castleberry. I know we're running short on time. I did have one question come from the chat that I did want to get to. So with the proposed minimum wage increase and looking at the current pay scale of our early childhood educators and in the workforce in the state, many are not getting paid the proposed minimum wage now. Many parents already state they cannot afford childcare or have difficulties paying that amount. Granted, some parents' wages will increase. However, this won't hold true for everyone. What do you think will transpire and how can we help?
Well, we're both over here going, oh, this is such a large problem in South Dakota. We all obviously know this, that childcare, and especially in rural South Dakota, even in Sioux Falls, we're having problems with this. There's a lot, I think. I know we talked about in our early learning stakeholder group about trying to start to get more childcare facilities on that list of registered facilities. That would have given support during COVID that they didn't receive. So that this is just such a hard topic because there are a lot of legislators who are, obviously not supportive of early learning, and I would even group childcare into that. I have been researching this and what other states have been doing. We've seen childcare subsidies coming to facilities, and that's something that I would recommend, but I also don't think we're capable of passing any sort of legislation like that. So
No.
this is still a problem that I think we're going to be seeing for a few more years until we absolutely have to address it in our legislature, which is unfortunately the path that we take a lot of times with a lot of different issues.
Yeah, and I know that there's talk federally, but quite frankly, don't hold your breath. But the key is that we need to pay our educators more. It's not just, it's childcare workers, it's educators, but we have a finite budget and there's not an appetite out there. So it's going to have to come in the form of a subsidy in order to impact and lift up, as we like to say, a rising tide lifts all boats, to lift up those individuals and make that more of a career choice for people. And that's the toughest. There are no easy answers, my friends. Don't have a silver bullet today. But we gotta go. We gotta go.
Yes.
We gotta get to the floor.
Thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here. And thank all of you for joining us on today's discussion. So keep up the good work. I appreciate you being an early learning champion for us at the state legislature. Thank you all and have a wonderful day.
Thanks,
Yep,
Kayla.
thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Eat that apple.
Hey, Brenda.
Yes.
All of these chats, I forgot to ask, they are, they will come with the, oh gosh, they'll come with the recordings, I guess is what I'm
Yes.
trying to say. Okay, awesome. Thank you. I was panicking, thinking I need to copy and paste everything real quick.
Oh, nope.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
Yep, you too. Bye-bye.